If you believe Donald Trump was just another easy target for late-night comedy, what you are about to hear will change that permanently. By midnight, 3 different digital platforms had crashed entirely under the weight of the traffic. By morning, the raw, unedited interview had been viewed 10 million times without a single network advertisement. By the following week, the entire concept of corporate broadcast censorship had been completely shattered by a single, brilliantly executed act of professional defiance. All of it started because one man assumed an executive order could quietly erase an entire political conversation. The atmospheric pressure inside the Ed Sullivan Theater feels completely wrong for a Monday night comedy broadcast, the air hanging heavy, thick, and undeniably compressed. The brilliant studio lights push 2 stops brighter than normal, washing the stage in an unforgiving, clinical illumination that bleaches the usual warmth from the audience. Stephen Colbert is already seated behind his desk, his posture perfectly still, his eyes scanning the crowd with the quiet, absolute control of a broadcaster who knows he is about to cross an irreversible line. The floor director stands in the shadows near the bandstand, his headset pushed entirely off his ear, sensing a massive, unauthorized deviation from the teleprompter. There is no gentle bass line playing underneath his opening remarks, no polite industry laughter. The complete absence of sound acts as a suffocating, physical presence. We have to go back to the morning of the broadcast to understand the sheer weight of what is about to happen. Backstage in the executive suites of CBS, the atmosphere was panicked, the network scrambling to appease the sudden, aggressive demands of a newly empowered FCC. The legal department had marched into Colbert's production office, dropping a mandate that carried the unmistakable weight of the Oval Office. They explicitly banned a scheduled interview with Texas Democratic candidate James Tallarico, citing an immediate fear of retaliatory equal-time violations designed by the Trump administration to bankrupt dissenting networks. Donald Trump's entrance into the narrative happens not in person, but through a suffocating digital shadow, his power claiming the territory of the studio before the cameras even roll. His presence is felt in the absolute, terrified silence of the network executives, an exercise in claiming dominance over the airwaves from 1,000 miles away. He had previously posted aggressively about canceling late-night dissent, loudly reminding his base that he dictates the headlines, runs the regulatory agencies, and certainly does not need to tolerate a lecture from a comedian whose era, he claimed, had long passed. His digital barrage had dismissed the entire genre as failing, overrated relics desperately clinging to their desks. People tune in because they want absolute winners, and quite frankly, there is nobody left on those networks who even knows what winning looks like anymore, he had declared to his followers. The network absorbed this attack by capitulating, but through this entire corporate onslaught, Stephen Colbert had stayed completely, terrifyingly silent. He simply watched the legal team issue the mandate, his expression an unreadable mask of absolute calculation. The silence stretched out through the afternoon rehearsals, turning the network's booming fear into a hollow echo chamber of its own profound insecurity. Then, Colbert finally moves on live television. He leans forward on his desk, his elbows resting precisely on the polished wood, and when he speaks, his voice drops significantly lower, entirely devoid of his usual theatrical projection. They told me I couldn't have him on. Then they told me I couldn't even mention that I wasn't allowed to have him on. But since my network evidently prefers we don't discuss this, let's discuss it. The theater instantly goes dead quiet, the air freezing in the lungs of every single attendee. The narrative shifts back to the present moment, where the massive production screen behind Colbert flickers to life, completely ignoring the network's approved graphics. Instead, it displays the raw, unedited footage of FCC Chairman Brendan Carr on a cable news show, explicitly weaponizing the equal time rule as a threat against talk shows daring to host opposing political candidates. It is a moment the administration had framed as simple regulatory fairness, but displayed here in stark, high-definition silence on a comedy broadcast. It lands like a physical blow to the concept of free speech. Colbert does not raise his voice. He simply asks a devastating question about how an administration claiming absolute strength relies on the architecture of forced silence to sustain it. Trump's immediate response on social media is a loud denial of censorship, calling the network's decision a routine legal matter and dismissing Colbert as a whining partisan. Colbert counters calmly on the broadcast, letting the denial hang in the dead air for a brutal 5-second pause before he quietly pulls his ultimate maneuver. A low murmur ripples through the audience, a collective realization that the host is burning his own bridge live on the air. Colbert reaches slowly beneath his desk, moving with the deliberate precision of a surgeon operating on an exposed nerve. He places a plain manila folder on the surface, opening it to reveal the printed official communication from the network lawyers, highlighting the exact phrasing that dictated the censorship. The camera pushes in tight on the document, an undeniable physical manifestation of the administration's chilling effect. The screen behind him shifts again, displaying a meticulously documented visual timeline connecting the dates of Trump's threats against broadcast licenses directly to the sudden influx of legal memos paralyzing the CBS building. The administration's digital proxies try to talk over the visual evidence online, their rhetoric rising in pitch as they dismiss the timeline as a desperate Hollywood hoax. Colbert slows his cadence down even further on stage, forcing the room to absorb the sheer weight of the verified dates. The tension in the theater is so thick it feels actively dangerous. The narrative splits again. Backstage, just 1 hour before the show, Colbert had made a decision. He had quietly escorted James Tallarico into a secondary studio, completely bypassing the broadcast feed, and recorded the forbidden interview in its entirety. Now, on live television, Colbert looks directly into the primary camera and informs the audience that he has decided to take the FCC's advice literally. He cannot put the interview on television, so he has uploaded the entire 15-minute unedited conversation to YouTube. The audience is physically hit by the audacity of the workaround, a collective sharp intake of breath vibrating through the stadium seating. Trump's digital surrogates shout that the move is an illegal end run around federal regulations. Colbert does not argue. He simply smiles, a cold, forensic expression that proves the digital loophole is entirely, unequivocally legal. A former network legal liaison, who had observed the afternoon's chaos, later provided a statement that went immediately viral. His testimony was entirely procedural, detailing exactly how the network executives had panicked under the perceived threat from the White House. "I rehearsed walking away 6 times in the parking garage before I finally found the courage to quit," the liaison admitted, his text-based account carrying remarkable control. Trump aggressively attacked the man's credibility online, yelling that he was fired for gross incompetence. The liaison absorbed the verbal assault by letting the facts stand perfectly still. Then, a senior production assistant, a woman forced to hastily rewrite the evening's rundown while under the suffocating weight of a strict non-disclosure agreement, leaked her own account to an independent journalist. Her testimony was emotionally devastating, detailing the intense isolation and the profound professional cost of enforcing a political blackout. Trump posted furiously, his digital face flushed dark red, shouting that she was a traitor, betraying the loyalty of the network. The assistant's leaked statement stared directly back at him, laced with absolute titanium. "Silence doesn't protect anyone. It just makes the people who enforce it more comfortable." The internet did not cheer or scream. It broke. One major news outlet picked up the story. Another joined. Within seconds, the digital landscape was consumed by a slow, deliberate wave of sharing, not for the late-night host, but for the truth finally breathing in the open. The main screen on Colbert's set splits in half, displaying the broadcast television feed on the left, safe, sterile, and entirely compromised. And on the right, the live view counter of the YouTube interview, skyrocketing past 4 million views in real time. The alignment is absolute and undeniable. Trump's online denials shift frantically from screaming about FCC rules to yelling that the servers are artificially inflating the numbers, a desperate pivot that exposes the sheer, naked panic beneath his anger. His digital collapse unfolds across multiple, undeniable metrics. The frequency of his posts becomes heavily erratic, his rhetoric rising and falling in rapid, shallow bursts of capitalization. His arguments, previously gripping a semblance of regulatory authority, begin wiping frantically at the narrative, attempting to claim he never cared about the interview in the first place. His digital posture slumps inward, his broad threats stiffening and shrinking as he leans away from the visual evidence of the massive 10 million view counter dominating the trending topics. His focus darts aggressively around the platform, refusing to settle on Colbert, the leaked testimonies, or the raw numbers, eventually going completely, terrifyingly silent. His verbal progression spirals from confident denial to accusing Colbert of an illegal ambush, dropping into a procedural complaint about internet regulations, attempting a weak burst of bravado about his own rally sizes, and finally landing in total, absolute quiet. Colbert looks at the camera, his expression entirely neutral. You built the architecture. I'm just showing people where the doors are. Trump's feed remains completely still. The aftermath escapes the studio like a controlled detonation. Backstage, the veteran network executives stand completely frozen, their phones lighting up as they watch the online metrics in stunned disbelief. Trump's lead communications director is seen typing so frantically on his phone that autocorrect sends pure nonsense to the press pool for 3 straight messages. Within 8 minutes, the first unauthorized clip of the monologue hits the internet. Within 20 hours, the full forbidden interview reaches 10 million views, each click spreading at viral velocity. Cable news networks immediately cut into their morning programming, their graphics departments frantically rebuilding the timeline of the censorship with red arrows and annotations. Anchors replay Colbert's defiance, allowing his thematic anchor word to sit on the screen for a full segment without adding their own commentary. Trump's counterattack fails to materialize, replaced by a devastating absence from the public conversation. Yet, beneath his previous frantic denials, users reply with screenshots of the exact YouTube view count, proving the utter failure of his intimidation. The public shift is instantaneous. People are no longer debating the politics of the FCC, they are dissecting the psychology of an administration whose entire censorship facade shattered on live television. The assistant's testimony about silence becomes a global caption, trending worldwide as the definitive summary of the night. The story does not end with a sudden confession or a reversed policy. It burns slow, a digital fire that cannot be contained by late-night executive orders or legal threats. Because an architecture built on fear only holds until someone finally refuses to look away. If this changed how you see power, hit subscribe. If it didn't, watch it again. The details you missed the first time are the ones that matter most. Notifications on. Next one drops soon.